Good day, students. Welcome to Science Math M.1 with Merivit's Education Center. I am Teacher Karen. Before we proceed to our lesson, let's practice first some vocabulary words. 1. Reproduce. 2. Offspring. 3. Sexual reproduction. 4. Gamete. 5. Ovary. 6. Flowering. 7. Angiosperm. 8. Ovule. 9. Pollen. And 10. Endangered. Our topic for today's class is about sexual reproduction in flowering plants. In this session, you'll be able to explain floral structures involved in plant reproduction, differentiate the sexual reproduction processes of angiosperms and plant asexual reproduction, and know the importance of pollination for global food security. Flowers. Yes, flowers. What is flower? Flower is the part of a plant that is often brightly colored and has a pleasant smell, or the type of plant that produces this. How do plants reproduce? Excellent. Flowers are plant reproductive organs for sexual reproduction, while different parts are used for asexual reproduction. Flowering plants are considered the highest evolved on the surface of the earth because they can reproduce both sexually and asexually. Plant reproduction. The primary purpose of a flower is reproduction. Sexual reproduction in plants occurs in sex organs called flowers. When male and female gametes join together, the process is called fertilization. So let's explore more about reproduction in flowering plants. So again, students, when we say reproduction, it is the production of offspring. So my question is, do all flowering plants show sexual reproduction? Right. Only angiosperms show sexual reproduction. The gymnosperms or non-flowering plants cannot undergo sexual reproduction because they have no reproductive organs. And we have two forms of reproduction. Yes. Can you guess what are they? Right. Sexual reproduction and asexual reproduction. So what do you think are the difference between two? Amazing! Sexual reproduction involves male and female organs, while asexual reproduction takes place without joining of male and female organs. It requires only one parent and duplicates offspring that are same as the parent. Examples of these are banana, algae, mosses, liverworts, and sugarcane. How do plants reproduce? What are plants' reproductive organs? Excellent! All parts of a flower aid in the process of reproduction. Flowers have different characteristics depending on their type, but most of them have four important parts as follows. Stamen is next to the petal and the male reproductive organ of the flower. It consists of a filament and the anther, where pollen is produced. Anthers are the orange-yellow structures often seen in the center of a flower. Pistil innermost parts of the flower and the female reproductive part. It is made up of three parts: a stigma, a style, and an ovary. Petal is next to the sepal. It has a bright color, nectar glands, and a pleasant smell to attract insects, which helps pollination. Sepal is transformed from the leaves, which is the outermost part of a flower. It covers and protects other parts and supports its forming. In some plants, sepals can photosynthesize and attract insects. There are two types of flowers. Do you know what are they? Amazing! The two types of flowers are unisexual and bisexual flowers. A unisexual flowers may either contain a stamen, which is the male flowers, or the pistils, which is the female flower. There were some examples for the unisexual flowers. Can you give one? Great! Examples for unisexual flowers are watermelon, papaya, pumpkin, and corn. Bisexual flowers. Bisexual flowers contain both the stamen, male flower, and the pistil, female flower. Flowers reproduce by the process of pollination. Pollination is the transfer of pollen grains from anthers to stigmas. The pollen grains are transferred from the anther of the male flower to the stigma of the female flower, enabling fertilization, resulting to the production of seeds. Process of pollination. When pollen is fully mature, the anther opens to release pollen grains. The pollen grains then fall and are dispersed far. Pollination occurs when the pollen grain lands on the stigma and is captured by a sticky fluid. Pollination can occur at night or during the day, depending on plant species. Flowers are beautiful for us not to notice it. Flower has pollen grain located along the inner edge of the anther sacs. Pollen is a powder produced by the male parts of a flower that causes the female parts of the same type of flower to produce seeds. It is carried by the insects, water, or the wind. Bee, butterfly, snail, bird, and bat are all pollinators. Pollinators are anything that helps carry pollen from the male parts of the flower stamen to the female part of the same or another flower stigma. Pollinators are important. They are vital to the production of healthy crops for food, fibers, cooking oil, medicines, or other raw materials. There are many methods of pollination. We have 1. Pollination by insects. 2. Pollination by bats. 3. Pollination by birds. 4. Pollination by wind. And 5. Pollination by water. Plants have developed adaptations to promote symbiotic relationships with insects that ensure their pollination. Insect pollination includes bees, flies, butterflies, and moths. Bees are the most important pollinator of many garden plants and most commercial fruit trees. Some examples of an insect-pollinated plants are okra, papaya, sunflower, coconut, and durian. Wind pollination. Wind pollination is also called as anemophily, describes the process of the transfer of pollen from one individual plant to another, whereby the pollen is carried by air currents. Examples of the wind pollination are conifers, rice, maples, wheat, corn, and barley. Water pollination or hydrophily is a fairly uncommon form of pollination whereby pollen is distributed by the flow of waters, particularly in rivers and streams. Some weeds such as Australian seagrass and pondweeds are pollinated by water. The pollen floats on water, and when it comes into a contact with a flower, it is deposited inside the flower. Pollination can be either self-pollination and cross-pollination. Self-pollination is the transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of the same flower or from the anther to the stigma of other flower in the same plant. In other words, self-pollination occurs within same flower, while cross-pollination is the transfer of pollen grains from the anther of one plant to the stigma of another plant or of the same species, or it occurs between two different flowers of same species. What are the advantages of cross-pollination? Alright. Cross-pollination has the distinct advantage of providing more genetic variation to the offspring. More variation will help the offspring to survive in a changing environment. Uses of cross-pollination in agriculture. For centuries, farmers have been trying to cultivate new varieties of crops through crossbreeding of closely related plants. Do you know what's their main aim? Excellent! The main aim of crossbreeding is to produce offspring with desirable characteristics of each parent. For example, the Tinera variety of oil palm is produced by cross-pollination of the Dura variety with the Ficifera variety. Also, the pollen grains of a high-yielding variety of rice are artificially placed on the stigmas of another variety of rice that has resistance to disease to produce offspring that are both disease-resistant and high-yielding. So students, why pollination is important? Excellent! Pollination is mutually beneficial to plants and to pollinators. Pollination results in the production of seeds and is necessary for many plants to reproduce. Meanwhile, pollinators receive nectar and/or pollen rewards from the flowers that they visit. Again, students, how do plants reproduce? Great! Plants reproduce through its flowers. All parts of a flower aid in the process of reproduction. But how about the non-flowering plants? Amazing! Flowering plants, also called angiosperms, use a sexual mode of reproduction, while non-flowering plants reproduce through asexual reproduction. Reproduction in plants mainly revolves around the flower, which has both the male and the female gametes. Happy learning, students! See you in the next session. Bye-bye!